Good morning, Teresa. Thank you for coming and be the Confo's guest for today.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here with this lovely view. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, so by the way, we have a construction outside Market Square. I think they're prepping up for NFL draft day in spring. So you may hear some noise, so pardon us. All right. So here, Teresa, I look at your self-description in our Google form. And you said that you're a mom, you're an activist, you're a double cancer survivor, and a nerd. I like that part. Yeah. And a Yinzer Anna Nicole Smith, who's preoccupied with politics, gaming, dinosaurs, and being a good neighbor. You have tons of stories. I don't think that 3 hours is enough to get the stories out of Teresa, but try to squeeze everything in 1 hour.
Well, like you mentioned, the most important thing is just the nerd part, I think. That is the most consistent part of all that.
Are you into Star Trek, by the way?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you into Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars more than Star Trek. Well, I did used to watch Star Trek with my dad. The Triple Trouble episode, classic. Come on.
All right, we share here. All right, so... I came across my Instagram feed during the Pittsburgh Pride, and I saw her posting, and let me just show the audience here.
That was a good day. It was a good shot.
And let me flip it to. There you go. So now the audience can see it. Yeah. So this is like, this year I missed the parade, but last year I went.
Sure.
And it's like, oh, okay, all right. And then I noticed that you have an event coming up that you will inviting people to join. Is November for 24th.
Right? Yeah, June 24th.
Oh, yeah.
This month.
I mean, sorry.
No worries, trust me. No.
June 24th.
Yeah, this is 2 years in the making. So for 2 years, I've been working with Pittsburgh City Council, particularly Barb Warwick, who is actually from my neck of the woods. I'm actually from Greenfield, Squirrel Hill South. Okay. That's where I live and reside, raise my kids and everything else.
Okay, it's on the map too, Greenfield. If anybody doesn't know, right? Okay, it's right here.
A few blocks away from the Greenfield Giant Eagle. Everyone, knows where that's at. I'm a few blocks away from there. So, like around the cusp of both. And, I'm actually a Democratic committee member for Ward 15 too, which is in that area. It's a 4-year term. I'm on my 3rd year of that. So that's been really just a really great way to connect with my community and my neighbors and just be more involved in the democratic process of our city, which is something I've always cared about. I've always been a huge civics nerd too, on top of other stuff. So while doing that work, I met Barb Warwick, and one day, whenever we had the time to just sit and chat, I asked her straight up, "How do you feel about sex work?" And she was kind of taken off guard a little bit. That's something that's a little bit taboo. But then she decided, she was like, I'm interested. Tell me more. What would you like to do? And I started to explain the decrim ordinance I helped pass for marijuana back in 2015 or 2016. I'm sorry. My dates are sometimes a little bit off.
It's COVID.
I'm like, it's a blur. But around that time, my husband and I worked with various city council and other community stakeholders to pass an ordinance so that it would lessen the penalties for people who just consume marijuana. So instead of getting a misdemeanor charge, you would just get a summary offense and a fine, and you wouldn't have some charge on their record that hangs around their neck like an albatross for housing, jobs, things like the custody, things like that. So I thought, this is a cause that's near and dear to my heart, the sex work stuff. And I wonder if we could just mirror that, in the same way. My husband's an attorney. He's a criminal defense attorney. And so I asked him to give me the statutes for prostitution, the codes and everything else. And it was very similar to cannabis, where it was a misdemeanor offense that, unlike cannabis, it required jail time potentially, and also really high fines. So there's a sliding scale pattern of fines. Starts off at $2,500 and can go all the way up to $10,000, depending on how many times you get caught. So when I saw that, I was like, that's not fair, that's not right. And explained this to Barb, and she was like, I will introduce an ordinance if you do the legwork to, head up to our city council members, get the community on board and do the thing. And I mean, she's helped out tremendously too. Her and her staffer, Laura, I mean, by all means, like helping me get interviews with folks, or not interviews, but meetings with folks.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, she's just, that's how it started basically. And ever since then, I've just been trying my best to get this passed. For 2 years in the making now.
You've been busy.
We finally have that hearing date though.
So we're going to circle back.
Sorry, I'm just throwing everything out.
That's basically the summary of our conversation, right? So let's unpack all of that.
Yeah, sorry.
Right?
It's a lot.
No, it's good, right? So I'm so excited. So we have the local politics, the Democratic Committee, and then you have the cannabis activism right here, and also the sex workers, right? Okay, so we're going to address all those three, all right? So we have 55 minutes. All right.
Make it work.
All right, let's start with the most recent, election.
Sure.
All right, so I believe you are the supporter of Mr. Gainey.
Yeah.
Right.
Big fan of Ed Gainey, still to this day.
Okay, so I've always been independent ever since, I know, like 2 years before I moved to Pittsburgh. So I can't be involved in the primary. So and then I noticed that Pittsburgh pretty much our general election is the primary, right?
Yeah.
So
most elections are, Yes, yeah.
It's true. So I see a lot of not a lot, but like this Democratic committee member. So what is it? What is their role? I mean, why do we need that? And I see, especially for this primary, I see a lot of division. Like
there is a lot of division, and actually, as you probably know, Cory O'Connor actually won the Democratic committee vote for Allegheny County by about, I think it was like 4 or 5 votes. I could be wrong, but it was very close. And what a Democratic committee member basically does is we go around to our neighborhood, we door knock for candidates, we let them know like what's going on in the neighborhood, we listen to their problems. It's usually traffic calming that they want. But otherwise, we basically then meet with candidates whenever there's elections, judges, mayors, everyone in between. And those people try to rally for support of the Democratic committee to get on the slate card. And generally, if you're on the slate card, you're probably going to win the election because it's just who people see the most. These people usually have the most funding, and they usually get pretty high up when it comes to ranking on the final voting day because of that. So like right now, when the mayor race happened, you didn't see Ed Gainey on the slate cards, which was unusual. Usually, incumbents are usually automatically on the slate cards in Pittsburgh and a lot of most other cities, but not this time. But Ed's still in it, But that's why it's important, though. Try to navigate who should be on the slate cards, I guess.
Okay, all right. So for the recent primary, and then Mr. Gainey lost. Mm-hmm. So why do you think was the case? What happened?
I think Cory's a good guy too. I'm not trying to like badmouth Cory. I like him too. He's fine. Yeah. I liked him as a committee member and everything else, or a council member, and a commissioner. I voted for him for that. I'll say that there is a pushback in some areas like Greenfield, like where I live. I mean, first off, he's from there. So people love Cory O'Connor. If you're from the Greenfield, Point Breeze area, like that's his place. So number one, there's that, okay? And that got a huge voter turnout, especially in my ward. But there was like his sister was at the voting. Like people know him more like community, So that helped a lot. But two, there's a kind of a pushback on progressive politics in some of the more older, blue collar areas, working class areas in the city. And I've noticed that. And Cory, I think, represents an older style type of Democrat than Ed Gainey, I think, to a lot of people. I think a lot of people blame things like racism. They blame things like anti-Semitism, both back and forth. That was all just muddying the waters and weird. Both of these guys are not, that's not it. I think it just what Ed represents. And I think there was a lot of, protests during COVID, a lot for the BLM movements. There was a lot of a push for social equity and more justice in the communities. And I think that really, Pittsburgh's a racist town. We still have a lot of issues with that kind of shit. And I think that this was the result of that, I think. Okay. I don't think that Cory is racist. I'm saying that, I think generally, there is a lot of racism still in our city and a lot of pushback. And that makes people very upset to hear about social equity when they don't quite understand maybe the nuance of that. I think it's more, the culture wars have really, I think, tainted a lot of people's views on that kind of stuff. And they don't realize that it's actually a class issue and not a issue like that. they hear things like defund the police. They hear things like, these are talking points they hear on Fox. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they're able to say, oh, the city's so dangerous. And it's not. You're down here all the time. It's not dangerous. It's weird sometimes. It's not dangerous.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's just two different kind of Democrats, and I'm admittedly more progressive than most Democrats in my area. I'm from Greenfield, so Barb's more progressive too, and that really pisses a lot of people off. They hate the speed bumps. They hate the bike lanes. They hate the traffic calming. They say it's it's dangerous. They don't like the affordable housing because they don't want those people moving into their neighborhoods.
Right? Not in my backyard.
Yeah,
right?
It's very it's cartoonish sometimes, but that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. I can tell from I think I told this recently. I forgot to whom, but after the primary, right? I think. During primary, I'm an independent, so I could not vote anyways. But so I was out of state at that point, and I told that person that I appreciated what Mr. Gainey did to the neighborhoods that's usually forgotten.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. Remember in wintertime there was a storm, and I live in Squirrel Hill, and usually in the past it was. One of the first few streets got plowed and salt and all that stuff, right? So I had a meeting in Troy Hill if I'm not mistaken, but then, it took me a while to get out of the neighborhood because it was mess. All the 61s, like jamming Forbes, right, everything, right? And it took me a while, but then when I hit Troy Hill, and then it turns out that the meeting location was changed to up in Perry Hills, right? And when I went there, it's like. Wow, it's clean. It's clear. There's no snow. It's salted. And I look at the condition of the road and no potholes, right? Because I remember that some time ago they were full of potholes, right? And on the flip side of it, right, in the Squirrel Hill, we had potholes, right? And not taken care of for a while, right? And I actually saw some posters, right? Like during the campaign, I'm sure. It said, "Hey, fix the potholes," and but and then I told my friends, like, if I were a Democrat, I would have voted for Mr. Gainey, not because, but because of what he did to the other neighborhoods that usually forgotten. Yeah, right. It's equitable, right? So I mean, it's not always that, hey, where are the I don't know, the powers that be live and then taken care of first, right? I mean,
He's a guy for the people. He's a man for the people. I've known him for a very long time. When I was working to pass the medical marijuana bill here in Pennsylvania, like years ago, he was a House rep at the time instead of mayor, of course. And it's a drive to get to Harrisburg. You know what I mean? I know he knows you'd have to go there. And there was days we'd have a rally, a Monday or Tuesday, or a lobbying day, some obscure day. It's a snowstorm. It's rough getting there. He would be there with boots on, dripping, making puddles behind him. But he would be there and he would speak to people and he would get people riled up. And he would, because he has that, that preacher voice. He's up there, doing the thing. And it was just, we wouldn't have been able to pass medical marijuana if it wasn't for Ed Gainey here in Pennsylvania. He was an integral force in that. And that's one of the reasons I've supported him too. I've seen him in action. I know he's consistent. He has the receipts for me, And again, I know Cory does too, good guy. But like, for me personally, I think Ed represents the working class. And I like that. We need more of that, especially in a blue-collar rust town like Pittsburgh. I think that's important, especially as the federal government becomes more and more aggressive. I want Ed Gainey or a type like Ed Gainey to be out there telling ICE to stand down or telling the president to back off. I can't see Cory doing that in the same way. We'll probably get to find out, unfortunately, for better or worse. And I don't think he'll necessarily show his belly, but. I don't know. It's just different vibes, and I'm optimistic. I'll always support who the people want. I'm not some weirdo. If he wins, if Cory wins at the end of the day, I'm weirdo in other ways, but not like that. It's just But yeah, you're right though. The potholes and traffic calming, like I just mentioned, the committee work. I'm constantly taking that information back to Barb, complaining to Barb. Getting new stuff put in. We got rumble strips put in. We got speed things. My neighbors love that. And I like it too. I have kids. But yeah, there's that whole roundabout situation. They're gonna tear all the. Did you see that? Oh my goodness! Did you see the in Squirrel Hill, there where the tunnel? You know how that on Squirrel Hill exit you have to come down and you have to take a left and get on the Parkway that way. It's nuts. They're gonna take all that out. They're gonna redo everything. It's gonna be a multi-year project.
Wow.
Yeah, the community's a little bit up in arms. We got the NIMBYs. We got the people who want it, who don't want it, or who don't know how it's all gonna work.
Yeah.
That's a whole different show.
Right. And I guess there are a lot of situations that are happening. It's outside. It's anyone's control. For example, the Anderson Bridge, right? And then I forgot the bridge that's actually next to Anderson Bridge, next to Phipps. It's also down. That's why the traffic is like, terrible.
But the Ed actually got that bridge rebuilt though. That fell down really quickly. I was really proud of that. Yeah, that was cool. The Fern Hollow Bridge. Yeah, that was. That was nuts. Walking underneath that thing now, it's crazy.
Yeah,
infrastructure.
Right. So it's. So don't accuse Storyboard for being partisan because it election already happened, right?
Yeah, it's already good.
This is like postmortem. Let's see, because I know, as you heard from my prior podcast, I love postmortem. Like what went wrong and what happened, right? So I think we can learn a lot from what could have been done, what should be done, and what are we going to do next, right?
Yeah, that's all you can do is look forward.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So I think that's a light topic. Yeah. So while we're talking about this politics and also your involvement in this Democratic Committee member, let me ask you this a little bit. So what do you think about Senator Fetterman?
About who?
Senator Fetterman.
Yeah. So I've known him for a long time too, and actually we've known him. He was a supporter of cannabis reform for ages, like back when he was still mayor of Braddock. And my husband, as an attorney, actually defended some folks down in Braddock, and actually met John that way. And John was the real deal. Showed up with the tattoos, did the whole. It was supportive. Yeah. Gave him the whole spiel. Awesome. And then for me, since I do a lot of activism work in the community, and for my job, I actually work at Cresco Labs, and I do their DEI CSR work, like anything for the community, and just being a good neighbor if that's what falls under my thing.
Right.
And that was before I met him. That's after though. I met him though. But but knowing his wife does the free store down there, like I started working with her. So like I've known them in capacity with their kids and for a very long time. I don't know. We gave the Pittsburgh Normal, the organization that I run for cannabis reform. We gave him money when he ran for office from we're a 501c3. We did that. Not a lot of money, but a little bit. Right. So we've always supported him. But recently, I'm not sure what's going on here with this guy. I know he had the stroke. I know depression, and it's I'm a double cancer survivor. I get health issues. Like that's laudable that he's open about it. I like that. I think it's important for people to talk about that, especially men with depression and mental health issues. That's super important. Totally. Yeah, like that's a taboo topic. However, this trying to be moderate at the expense of like meeting with Steve Bannon and stuff, I'm not really quite sure where I'm seeing the 4D chess here. And then as someone who lobbies, both state and federally for further cannabis reform, I was there for a lobbying day in Washington, D.C. maybe 2 years ago, I believe it was. And I didn't meet with him, but the group I was in went to go meet with him. I was doing other meetings. And they said that he was very dismissive about the cannabis issue. He said that he had bigger fish to fry whenever we asked him why he hadn't signed on to the MORE Act or the Safe Banking Act, which is pretty like low-hanging fruit. That was a bipartisan bill that basically made it so that banks could loan to state cannabis stores and businesses, big, small, and in between. It's not just for big companies like like Cresco. It's for anybody because that's a big issue, being a Schedule I drug that still hasn't changed. And also, the MORE Act was an automatic expungement bill for folks who had been caught up in things. So I think at the point where every corner basically has a hemp store now, and there's you can buy things online, and everyone has a card, and yada yada. Like this is bare minimum. I think that John Fetterman, I assumed that he would be very like, oh, of course, I'll sign something that helps the community. He didn't. And whenever he was caught on it, he gave us that, I have bigger fish to fry, or them the thing. And we were very just taken aback. And we've reached out to his office, other people have, and just he's just not the supporter with that he purported to be whenever he was in Harrisburg, when he used to wave the cannabis flag outside and
when
be
he
all
was still
about
a
it.
little fish.
Yeah, a baby John. When he was just a baby John, and it just so, because he's a nice guy. Like I haven't seen him in quite some time, so I don't know if his personality has changed all that much. But his wife's nice. I love Giselle. She's always been very kind to me. I still donate stuff to the Free Store because it's not the people at Braddock's fault if his brain is fucking scrambled eggs now. So like we gotta just it's a thing, and I'm bummed. I'm bummed out by his lack of consistency with these issues. I know the world's on fire. I know that cannabis compared to some other stuff is like small potatoes. I get that, but in the same time, there's a lot of people in jail for this, and people's families are still getting torn apart. One of my best friends, Dan Music, he lived in Pittsburgh. He's in federal prison right now and has been for 5 years for cannabis and cannabis only. He was an attorney beforehand. He was a young guy, got swept up in some people in Braddock, as a matter of fact, weird coincidence, were selling cannabis, and they ratted on people down the line, and Dan wouldn't rat. So he got 5 years in federal prison. And he missed the birth of his child. He missed the death of his grandmother. The guy's still in prison. He's like melting in like 90-some degree heat in Fort Dix in New Jersey, which is known for like roaches and asbestos. For cannabis and cannabis only. There's no shrooms, there's no gun, there was no fighting with police, no wacky stuff. He was dead to rights basically because he got caught on wiretaps and stuff. He just wouldn't snitch. And I think that's laudable. And I think that it's crazy that people like Fetterman, people like Summer Lee, don't come out and say and support anything about him, Wait,
Summer Lee also didn't.
No, she didn't sign those bills either, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Because one was in the Senate, one was in the House.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. But no, she didn't sign that either. And when we reach out to her,
was she a supporter when she was a state?
I'm assuming she's always been a supporter of cannabis reform because she cares about social equity issues, and I think we all know the war on drugs is the most racist and classist thing that the government has done in quite some time. So I mean, like. Yeah, drug dealer lives matter. they matter, particularly nonviolent cannabis folks. Particularly that. That's low-hanging fruit. These people do not deserve to be in jail when my company makes a lot of money and hemp is everywhere and people are doing this legally. I understand that they didn't have a permit, they didn't have a piece of paper that allowed them to do this, but 5 years in federal prison seems like a lot. Okay. And I work with other organizations that work with cannabis prisoners, and people are in jail for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and more for this stuff. So
and that's insane. For selling or distributing. Okay, it's not
distributing cannabis,
not using. Right.
Well, I don't really think that's wrapped up. Usually, it's usually just
okay. Yeah. All right. So that is a good segue. From the politics to the cannabis.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not a user. I admit that there are a lot of definition and lingos that are.
Sure.
I tried to use ChatGPT last night.
No worries,
but I have an expert right here. We like human, right? We don't, let's hear it from her. So, okay.
Human's always better.
You're right. So I'm stupid in this matter. All right. So there's so many names, right? There's cannabis, there's marijuana, weed, ganja, hemp. And then there's a THC, and then there's
Zaza,
a CBD.
as the kids say.
What is it?
Zaza, as the kids say.
Oh, there you go. I need to put that in my cheat sheet right here.
Yeah.
All right. So can you go over that? What's the difference and why? I know that. I don't know. Forgot which one is which. Like one is legal, the other one is not, and one requires prescription, the other one is recreational, one is medicinal. Like, what are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I like calling it cannabis. Marijuana is a racist term. It's the combination of Mary and Juan whenever they were trying to do the
I didn't
marijuana.
know that.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't. And it's cartoonishly really racist and shitty. And so
thank you. I got educated right here.
Right? No, I'm most people don't know that. And actually the war on drugs, I don't know if you know, but when cannabis first started, when people started getting upset about it, was because a lot of the Latino immigrants that were coming up were bringing it with them and using it, and then that was just a good way to criminalize them. They weren't doing anything particularly harmful, but these stereotypes of the racist stereotypes. Oh, these people are lazy, they're violent, they're crazy if they consume this. They party too hard. And then that also evolved into the black jazz scene as well. So a lot of the same stereotypes back then were it's rooted in racism. Anslinger, Harry Anslinger is actually from Pennsylvania. R.I.P. Super dead, thank God. He's actually from the middle of the state. And he actually was one of the people that made Reefer Madness, the movie, like where you smoke a joint and you kill your family with an axe because the two, and that was a real federally funded movie. That wasn't just like some guy made it or it was like jokey or made by wacky, people. No, it was the federal government who made that movie. And there's a lot of he used to say things like smoking cannabis makes black people think that they're as good as white people. He used to say these things. And all that information went to the Nixon presidency as well. And Nixon knew he could criminalize, hippies and other people. So the terminology was just not good. So cannabis is actually closer to what it actually should be as a plant, like what we should be calling it. Hemp is a difference because hemp is cannabis, but hemp is cannabis with THC less than 0.2%. And that is legal under the Farm Bill that was passed. That's why if you go to Gecko, if you go to head stores, head shop stores, you can buy this. And there's a lot less regulation on it than what I have to do with my company. For example, packaging, since I work at a medical marijuana store that's regulated by the state, we have to make sure our packaging is childproof. We have to make sure that we don't advertise to children or make child appealing products. So no Joe Camel type ads on the things, no fruity flavors and boba, cute things on there. Can't do that, no Mr. Rod, none of that, which is good. Responsible adult use is our main goal, but these hemp stores don't have to do that. The other day I saw a package of Blues Clues weed, Clues with a Q. I was like, come on, it's hemp. It was hemp. What I mean? But and if you're someone with a low tolerance, that will absolutely still get you high. And if you're someone who is consuming the other sub things, the Delta 8, the various other THC types, TCA, that you can buy now. People can have really adverse reactions on this. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
And it's not the dosage isn't regulated in the same way. It's kind of weird. I don't think it should be banned by any means. I'm not one of those proponents, but I do believe there needs to be more regulation. And then not all the hemp stores are made equal. You have stores like Black Bear Dispensary, which is very on the up and up. It's a clean store. Everything's clearly marked. They know where everything is from. You can go read reports about how it was tested and things like that. It's just like a regular medical marijuana store, as opposed to the gas station where you're buying a pack of edibles it's 1,000 milligrams and you're buying it and you have no idea what it's made out of or if it's actually 1,000 milligrams. There's no state testing. My stuff gets tested by the state twice. No mold, no pesticides, making sure it actually says it is what it says it is. And it's made by Pennsylvanians inside Pennsylvania. Even though Cresco's a company from Chicago, the tax money stays in Pennsylvania. Everyone who works here is from Pennsylvania and it's, grown here. So I don't know. The hemp stuff is not. The hemp stuff is usually imported from overseas.
Okay.
Because the hemp licenses that do exist in the United States are very limited. And we don't have, there wouldn't be enough to fill all the stores for all the needs. So a lot of it comes from China and a lot of it comes from Canada. And cannabis is a leacher of heavy metals out of the ground. That's why they used it during the Fukushima cleanups, because it's really good at that.
Oh, wow.
So this unregulated cannabis, when it's grown in China and Canada, oftentimes it's grown in fields that aren't really regulated in the way that we have to regulate ours. And they have big issues with metals in their hemp and all kind of pesticides and all kind of other weird stuff. So I don't know. We just need more regulation. I'm all for there being weed stores in every corner. Fine, whatever. I love weed. However, it needs to be regulated. It needs to be safe, and it needs to be not in the hands of kids. And when I go and lobby for further reform, they're bringing up the issues that come from the unregulated hemp industry that exists. DUI, housing concerns, which are also concerns to the medical market. But this is exacerbated by this unregulated market. And like I said, adverse reactions. There's a lot of people that buy these edibles, they get way too high, and they end up in the emergency room. And as someone who's advocated that cannabis is relatively safe for the last decade, that's a hard argument to sell whenever they bring out the statistics sheets. It's not my regulated cannabis, though. It's this. So, now it's an extra hurdle that I have to jump over. And the issue is always, okay, we need to regulate, but for some reason, that's not how conservative minds work. They just want to take away. They don't want to fix. So it's frustrating.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm missummarizing this. Okay, so you're advocating for more regulations to make sure that the kids are safe.
Absolutely.
To make sure the safe use of cannabis.
Yeah, kids and adults. Yeah, no one wants to have a bad time. And as a company, I want to sell more weed. I want to sell you more. I would love you to try. I'm not. I would like this. But I want you to do it in a way that you don't have a bad time doing it. I want you to be safe, and I want you to come back. And you're not going to come back if you are so violently high that you're gripping onto the floor to keep from falling off the earth. Like that's not how we don't want that. And that's not what we want anyway, because like you said, there's medicinal, there's recreational. I do believe that even recreational is medicinal. I think that
there's a purpose. There's a reason why they want that, right? I mean, probably because of stress or because
that's what I mean. Stress is and that's a killer. That's
exactly
that's the number one killer. Sleep, you know what I mean? Things like that. Which kind of fall in that gray area between recreational and whatever. It's just a quality of life enhancer, really. And people should be able to have low dose choices. They should be able to have high dose choices, but you need to know what you're consuming. And some of the packaging is not so I saw a friend online the other day complaining that the hemp product she just bought didn't have clear packaging for what flavors it was and what was actually in the ingredients. People have food allergies, and a lot of these people who are looking for medicinal products, they have very sensitive stomachs and other issues, or maybe they're vegan and they don't know if there's fruit pectin in this or gelatin. Like these things matter. They have to be highly, or even religious things. Not everyone can have pork. You can't have, there's a lot of things that come into this that maybe I think your average consumer may not consider.
Okay. So you're advocating for regulations for the use of cannabis.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're also advocating for more recreational, allowing this recreational aspect, not just, So it's a quite intricate balance, right? I mean, like you want more use, but at the same time, please regulate. It's not like a free for all, right? It's not
nothing can be a free for all. And
it shouldn't. There must be a regulation.
But you can't police morals, and that's for anything, whether it's weed or sex work or anything else. You cannot police morals. We know this. This is a tale as old as time. We literally had, we used to hang people and put them in stocks and stuff as punishment. If that didn't stop them, this ain't stopping them, And that's just, so now what would we do? Like you said, you do the autopsy, you see what's going on, and then you keep it moving forward. So
I guess the key is like just enough. It's like how much is enough regulation and how much enough of our own thing, right? I mean, I guess it works for everything. I don't want to, put segue or anything. I just when you said that, it just reminds me of border control.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. You're not going to stop people.
Right. So it's like free for all. No, that's not right. But no for all, it's also not right. There must be a balance, right? There must be something that we can agree on, that who can go in, who cannot, and we need
the world is so
regulation.
polarized right now, and this extremes, all or nothing kind of thing is not the move. That's never been a successful way to run anything in this world. I don't know why people think that's different. No. You have to be nice to your neighbors. You have to figure out how to work with people. You're not always going to win everything. Compromise is the solution. You can continue to work.
You have to find a common ground. And I don't know why it's so hard. You have to find common ground. And I mean, it should be this first thing to say. I don't know. I'm going to put myself on the soapbox here. I mean, give me like 5 seconds, okay?
I'm here for it.
It's like, before you start a meeting, you just agree to share a common ground.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you have to agree to disagree. It's okay to agree to disagree, right? It's not like a fight that you have to win all the time. All right, that's what I'm saying.
Actually, that's funny you mentioned that. We started off our sex worker. We made a PowerPoint to introduce the ordinance to various folks, and it starts off right away with a slide that says, "Listen, no matter what side you fall on this issue, we all want the same thing. We want people to be safe."
Yay!
And
all right. Okay. So, is it okay to plant your own marijuana at home?
Oh no, not right now. No, one plant is a felony in Pennsylvania too. So don't mess around.
Okay.
Technically, people do. I wouldn't do it. I don't do it. The hemp, even with the hemp farm bill being passed, you still can't just go out and grow hemp. You have to get a license from the states, and then you have to do things to
even hemp.
Even hemp. Yeah. So even that you can't grow it yourself because that's just a cannabis plant. Hopefully, as we work to further reform in the state, I'm trying to pass an adult use bill. There's a few that are going to be introduced soon. I'm really excited about. And they include home grow. I'm very excited about that. And the numbers and all that changed. You know what I mean? They're different. Even the state store bill that Frankel just tried to introduce, which was terrible. Ooh. I don't know what he was doing with that, but even that one had home grow included in it. So I think that Pennsylvanians have advocated enough for home grow that it's going to be a must for any kind of reform going further, which is good.
Okay. So I think you already kind of mentioned it, but let's pretend that I'm a PA legislator or probably the federal, that are not probably either on the fence or totally against it, right? So how would you convince me to vote for your cause?
Sure. Well, depending on who the person I'm talking to is, they usually have a cause that's near and dear to them. Maybe they have kids, maybe they're a veteran, maybe they're, whatever the vibe is. A lot of our conservatives that we meet with, they have connections with veterans, for example. And I think veterans were one of the top patients we had actually from the medical marijuana program that actually received the most benefits for PTSD, sleeping, harm reduction, things like that. A lot of them have gotten off of opiates and be able to switch off of that to move over to this non-toxic alternative. And I think that whenever you start sharing the stories of veterans and people who are their constituents close to home, it's harder to say that something like recreation is just to get high and party and, be reckless and drive, irresponsibly. That's not the case. When you see veterans come in and they say, hey, listen, I haven't gotten a medical marijuana card, even though I want to participate in the program, because I'm afraid to, because it's not federally legal yet, but I would like more cover. And I would like for the VA to have some cover. And I would like to be able to own a gun still. But I know there's a rub between that, the federal and state. And they start sharing their problems with this person. And because I always bring in community members. I usually don't do these things myself. It's very silly to do that. You need to bring, community members in there and get them involved. That's usually a pretty good Trojan horse to get, at least the conversation starting. And like I mentioned, kids. I have kids. I have 3 kids myself. A lot of people do. A lot of their worries are, what about the kids? And at the end of the day, I want full recreation. I want more cannabis to be available. However, I also want regulation. And that's something that I think they can understand. They understand the fact that we had to buy our alcohol from state stores or in a grocery store and we have to show our ID. Children still get a hold of alcohol, of course, unfortunately, but it's less than it used to be historically by leaps and bounds. And it gets better every day. And the LCB is serious about regulation. And I think to bring parallels to what I do, not with the state store cannibal or cannabis model, but the what I do in a highly regulated system by the state, I can show them the receipts. We don't have issues with diversion. We don't have issues where kids are coming in wearing a trench coat and a mustache and walking out with pounds of weed. It doesn't happen. They can't. Things like that. And I don't know. You just show them the proof. And generally, at that point, if you show them the receipts or you bring people from the community and they still don't care for it, it's usually something a little bit bigger they have issues with. Maybe there's some political football going on behind the scenes or whatever, but then you deal with that a whole different way. Or
there's a lobbyist, there's a bigger lobbyist behind.
Yeah. Well, you never know. It's always a quid pro quo. I know that when we passed medical marijuana, the Republicans were really interested in these the gambling machines. This is before those were illegal. And I know, and I wasn't a part of the backroom stuff, but I heard through the grapevine that the Republicans were kind of like, hey, give us the gambling machines and we'll vote enough votes for the cannabis. And there's always it's cartoonishly evil. It is like a Simpsons episode back there. I'm waiting for Montgomery Burns to be wringing his hands one day when I open a door. It's a weird spot. But it's so important that we engage with our leaders, representatives, and senators, all of them. It's so important. And to vote in these smaller elections because, man, it all does trickle up. And if you don't like something like a state store cannabis bill, or you don't like something like some wacky stuff that's happening, you have to share your voice. So many people don't, and that's such a disappointment. Such a disappointment.
Right. So that's another good topic to engage is about story, right? We have less stories about the success or the benefits of using these products, using this cannabis as to help ourselves. But we hear about, people getting high and getting into accidents, right? So we have more stories on that. So I think, we need stories and give them power or agency or platform to tell their stories, right?
Absolutely, because you're right. No one on either side wants anyone to drive violently high and get smashed. My cousin's in a wheelchair because of a drunk driver. I know firsthand how important it is to advocate for responsible driving. I actually speak in front of the Pennsylvania DUI Association every year, and I have for the last few years. And that's a tough crowd. They don't love what I'm here to talk about all the time. And some people have given me some real spicy responses in the crowd. When they've But they're under, a lot of them are misinformed. A lot of them, we were just talking about the hemp stuff. A lot of them have told me, well, my clients are on probation and they're able to get a med card the same day. Whenever they can just call a doctor, they can pay online, they'll get a card the same day, and they can go in the stores. Well, that's not true. You can call a doctor now. After COVID, we're allowed to do the online doctors or the phone call doctors. So you can do that, but you still have to go through the Department of Health. You still have to get approved by a doctor in the state. You can't just say my back hurts, give me a medical marijuana card. You have to have proof, and the doctors have to go through a portal in the Pennsylvania Department of Health training program that actually has access to the Allegheny Health Network and UPMC and like all the data that doctors have, and they can actually see that you're telling the truth. So like I'm a double cancer survivor, they can go back there and prove that I actually had cancer. And that's what they use as a proof. And then after you pay the state and after you fill out the forms online, then you'll get a card in about a week. And you have to renew it every year. And there's a pharmacist on site at every single medical marijuana dispensary. So it's not just some free-for-all. But there are people who abuse the system.
Of course, there are always bad actors.
There always will be, absolutely. And there's going to be people who drive all intoxicated. And that's why we need more education for police to go after, to educate them about what that means. Proof of impairment standards instead of arbitrary numbers, for example. Medical marijuana patients right now are DUI when they're not even DUI. I would be DUI right now. I'm not intoxicated because it stays in your system for so long. But that's the thing. We want to work with the police to help. Because we don't want people to go to jail, but we also want bad actors off the road because that messes up my stuff too, And I live in the community. I don't want to get hit by someone, that's insane. It's just, there's ways to work. We're all on the same page, I think. I think that,
yes,
yeah, we all want the same thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned about looking over the database, make sure that you're legit to receive the medicine.
Yeah.
So does it mean that or people with a card from California, can they buy over here?
No, Pennsylvania has we can only be, you have to be a Pennsylvania citizen and you have to live in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And buy from Pennsylvania.
And presumably vice versa. I'm
what?
Sure. Presumably vice versa. If you have a Pennsylvania, then you can't.
No, so some states do have that. So actually your Pennsylvania card, you can use it in Michigan, you can use it in Washington, D.C.
Okay,
yeah.
So it depends.
Yeah, some states have that. There used to be more. There used to be like Maine and some other ones, but those states went recreational and now they can't, you don't use the card. But in Michigan still has a pretty robust medical marijuana program. And although you can't travel across state lines with cannabis because that's still federally illegal. That's still federally legal. If I go for a weekend to Michigan, which I do, I love Michigan. Michigan's awesome. You can go up there and show them your card, and you can get big discounts on cannabis. They'll give you the same kind of medical discounts that a patient would get, and then I can buy. Yeah. Okay. So Washington D.C. does that.
All right. Yeah. So that brings. I'm just like I travel quite a bit, and it just reminds me of a situation in which my family members need a prescription for Adderall refill, but you can't have it. You can't just like transfer. Hey, Rite Aid, can you please transfer? No, you can't do that because it's a different state, right? So I think it's the same method.
It's scary too if you're a consumer. Like if you're someone who like I took my daughter to a southern vacation a few years ago, and we went all the way to Mississippi, New Orleans, to Dollywood in Tennessee, and then back. And as a cannabis patient, I knew damn well if I got caught in Mississippi or somewhere else with my products that I would be in a world of shit. And especially with my kid, I cannot imagine how to explain that. Right. And that's scary because wasn't doing anything different than I do in PA. I wasn't smoking around her. I wasn't being crazy or driving while intoxicated or anything like that. Right. But it's still scary. And those states do have hemp, but I don't want to buy hemp products. I don't want to buy those in lieu of this. I don't know. Maybe we'll get there. The Schedule 1 status hearings were supposed to happen when Biden was in office. They got pushed back, and I don't think Trump really cares about advocating for this issue. And Pam Bondi, who was in charge of what she's in charge of right now, she's which is ridiculous. She actually was in Florida whenever they tried to pass legalization, and she's a hardcore prohibitionist. She does not like cannabis reform. So he's putting people in his cabinet who aren't for it, just like he did the first time with Jeff Sessions. The stark prohibitionists. So Trump's not an advocate for cannabis reform. I don't know why. I don't know why Republicans haven't swept this issue from Democrats yet. This is weird. This is a pretty bipartisan issue. For young people, you want to appeal to young people.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Probably he's using what Ferriman said. There's bigger fish to fry.
And there is, but like, so just get this over with then and go focus on the big fish. Like, this has been years. I'm tired. Like, I don't want to do this for the next 10 years. Like, help me. Like, I love my job, but like the activism stuff, like I'm sick and tired of going to Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. and explaining to someone that they're not going to OD on cannabis and die. You know what I mean? Or like, or that it's not going to be a gateway drug for their children because this kind of stuff is, or secondhand smoke. Oh my goodness. Like these are things that like the government has dispelled many, many years ago. And not everyone's on the up and up about this. I get it. But like these guys are booting on the issue.
Yeah. Exactly.
Please Google this. Please have your staffers Google this. Yeah. Your staffers absolutely consume probably. They're all young. Please.
Right. So I think you mentioned a term, but I think I heard before you understand, but probably if you can explain it to the audience. Gateway drugs. What is it? So
the gateway drug theory was a theory that was invented, I believe, in the 80s, maybe before that. But basically it said that if you start off with cannabis, that the chances of you using hard drugs skyrocket exponentially. That is not true. That correlation is not causation. So I think a lot of the ideology behind this was that people who do use hard drugs often say, well, I smoked weed a few times, or I like smoking weed. But it's not correlated. There's plenty of people, the majority of people who consume cannabis do not touch harder drugs. And we're just talking about the medical marijuana program in our state. There's almost 600,000 people that are registered in that program. Could you imagine if 600,000 people in Pennsylvania suddenly had this craving for harder drugs? Pennsylvania would be on fire right now. It would be people in the streets. It would be insane. That's not the case. It's just not the case. And we track these people. We know these people. These are like senior citizens and like people who are really ill. They're not out here jonesing for something harder. That's not how it works. Whenever you take people away from potentially having to go to a dealer that's on the black market or the legacy market here, they're not getting access to these other drugs. You know what I mean? If you go and you meet someone who's selling cannabis in an unregulated market, there's a good chance they might be selling something else too. And then you get access to that way. It's not the fact that you are necessarily looking for these things or being offered those things. I barely drink. You know what I mean? Like I go buy my weed in the dispensary now, and I don't see any other drugs. I don't even so I don't know. Yeah. It's not causation.
Right.
And I think it's also is a misunderstanding of what addiction is. Addiction is not some kind of moral failing where someone like wants to get high all the time. People who are addicted and using harder drugs are people who have severe mental health issues often. They're people who are abused, they have trauma, they're trying to cope, they have poor coping mechanisms, and this is where they're led to. Most people who are, the correlation for just because you consume something, cannabis is just something that is usually a little bit easier to get than something that's harder. So I think that there's a lot of issues with that theory, I think.
Right.
So this is proven in the 90s pretty firmly.
It's like the I think in our culture that we just put up some band-aids on, and then we're blaming the band-aids, not that finding the root cause. What's causing the depression? What's causing this?
Yeah, you could say milk is a gateway drug because everyone who did hard drugs absolutely consumed milk, or cigarettes, or alcohol. Forget consuming cannabis; they probably absolutely consumed alcohol. And as we know, most people who smoke or consume alcohol do not move on to harder drugs, or even harder alcohol. You know, there's plenty of people who are moderate consumers. So.
Right. Like for me, ice cream.
Yeah, me too.
Whenever I'm stressed out, like my family's like, Dad, eat ice cream.
That is the worst part about cannabis, I will say. The gateway, that is a gateway to munchies. I absolutely am chubbier than I probably should be because of that. But hey, life is short. Eat that ice cream.
That's right.
Eat ice cream. Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So, thank you for that. A lot of education right here. So now let's go to the last topic, right? For this sex workers, right?
Yay.
Yeah. And so let me show you a couple of slide here. Let's see. Make sure I have it for everyone. And this is how we started, and this is how you the Storyberg found Teresa, and then this is your profile on Instagram. This is how busy she is on the cannabis activism, the sex work activism, and then Democratic committee member, and we talk about this, right?
Yeah.
About the cause with cannabis, but this is called Pittsburgh NORML, right?
Yeah. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law. It's the oldest cannabis organization in the United States.
All right, okay. And and this is what we're going to talk about, right? So, and this is the website, all right? So, what is it? What are you advocating for? And what's the problem statement? Why does this exist?
Sure. Well, the Pittsburgh Coalition for Safer Sex Work was an organization that I started with my friend Maggie. She actually was a part of the Swoon organization. It was called SWAP Pittsburgh. It was a sex workers organization. Now it's called Swoon. They renamed themselves. It actually stands for Sex Workers Owning Our Own Narrative. And I had discussed that ordinance idea with Barb, and I was like, I got to reach out to the community and make sure that these people are on board. So I reached out. She's the one that got back to me. We had some meetings, and I basically said the same thing that I said earlier, that I did this thing with cannabis, where we lessened the penalties for cannabis. Can we do the same thing? Would you be interested in this? She was on board. So at that point, we started shopping it around to various city council members. We met with almost all of them. Admittedly, there's a few that I absolutely know are not about this, and like Teresa Nightingale Smith is someone who is not going to be about this, which is unfortunate because we share the same name. It's a bummer. So that Teresa does not care for the stuff that this Teresa is doing, I'm sure. However, I don't know where she does fall on the line 100%, so maybe you never know. But generally, we met with almost all of them otherwise, and most of them are on board. Most of them are open to the idea or on board, especially after we got about 20 or so plus organizations on board as co-sponsors of this ordinance. And again, it's not decrim, it's not legalizing. It's an ordinance to reduce the penalties for adult consensual sex work. So it only applies to adult consensual work. It doesn't apply to anyone who gets caught up in trafficking or anyone who's underage or anyone who's clearly abusing the spirit of this law. Same thing with cannabis, the cannabis ordinance. In Pittsburgh, you cannot pass decriminalization bills without getting the state involved. You can't just do that. I can't just usurp the rights and tell the police not to follow a law that is actually written by the state.
Right, because state always overrides.
Yeah, they always override.
Right.
However, the ordinances are basically a tool for them to use. They can use at their own discretion. And we generally find that they do. They want to use these tools because they want to reduce the interactions with people who they don't need to. The police know that people who are doing adult consensual sex work are not the people that are giving them a hard time. They're not people who are, really involved in any other, big issues. And it really frees up the resources for them to go after people who are trafficking or abusing folks or stealing from folks or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So basically, after meeting all these organizations, like I met with Allies for Health and Wellbeing, Trans Uniting, Prevention Point, National Lawyers Guild, the Jewish Women's Federation. We have just all kind of orgs. I would be happy to share a list. They're on our website here. We shopped those to City Council. We said, listen, these orgs are on board. Would Yinz be on board? And they said, hey, could you meet with some community people, our members? I met with Bobby Wilson asked us to meet more with his community members. We said, sure, because the North Side actually has a high rate of survival sex workers, people who are street walking. Whenever we did the data breakdown in the city, sorry, I'm all over the place. Sorry. We did a data breakdown that we could bring to these folks too, because they wanted to know the data, of course. We did a freedom of information request, and we also tracked the data down from the public records from the police. And we found that over the last 5 or 6 years, they stopped tracking it, I think, a year or two ago. But before that, there was about 700 people who were arrested for prostitution. These were all workers. These aren't Johns. These aren't people who are
within the city of Pittsburgh.
Within the city of Pittsburgh, about 700. Majority of them are Black and brown people. The majority of them are trans people and people who are in the LGBTQIA community. We started seeing a huge number, a disproportionate number. I mean, there's a ton of white people that get caught up in this too, but it's mostly women or these other marginalized groups that we've noticed. But we also found that there was only about 3 children that had been wrapped up in this and trafficking. Very important. No one wants that. However, we also don't think those 3 children deserve to be in the arrest data either. They don't deserve to be arrested or have some kind of charge. What they need is help. So we brought this data to the police. We brought this to the local council people like Bobby Wilson. And he said, meet with the East Allegheny Community Council folks. We did that. And they were all on board. We didn't have a single person dissent against us come up and have any issues, which was surprising. So far, we've been received pretty well by the most people that we have reached out to and introduced this to. again, Bobby Wilson's a little bit on the fence, I think. He had concerns about people in his neighborhood moving out and doing things like not loving the survival sex workers in the neighborhood. But this bill will not promote more sex work. That seems to be something that they keep on bringing. That a few people have brought up. Won't this encourage people to have more workers? That's just fundamentally not how this works. Why would anyone what? Seeing the data and knowing that it's mostly in Bobby Wilson's neighborhood and also downtown in the high-end hotels down here. The council member in downtown was on board completely. He was on board. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating to give the numbers to have the orgs and have a little bit of that confusion there with them. Sorry, I just got off track.
Oh, that's all right. That's like, results, right?
Just frustrating.
Okay, so so you mentioned about the lowering the I don't know, what is it called? Punishment, right?
Yeah,
right.
Lessening the penalties.
Lessening,
it's not decrim, it's lessening.
Not the decrim, just like lessening.
Giving police another tool to use that they can use. Yeah.
And also read in one of the articles that you mentioned that about the disparity between the punishment for the workers and the clients.
Sure.
Can you explain more, elaborate on that?
Yeah, so there's very little clients that actually usually get punished. They usually don't get caught and these things. And when they do, it's a slap on the wrist, as opposed to the girls who get the stacked fines, the potential jail time. Yeah, I mean, I have had a few people ask me if we would consider trying to make the penalties harsher for Johns and consumers. I don't think that's the move. I don't think that's right.
Why is that?
Because I don't think that in sex work is inherently wrong for the provider or the consumer necessarily. I don't think it's. I believe that sex work is real work, and I believe that people have the right to provide and also look for these and find providers.
Because I think the key in here is consensual, right?
Yeah, consensual. Right. Yeah.
So you don't want increase the clients. I mean, just lower it, right? So make it equally low in terms of the.
Yeah, basically, the punishment, because in a perfect world, yes, I would love to legalize this, but you have to start baby steps, just like with cannabis reform. We started off with local decrim ordinances across the state, and then we moved to medical, and then we're working on recreational. It's the same way we're doing this. That's not our overall plan. I don't have any kind of idea for that necessarily. But the idea is, you start with these baby steps, and then maybe we can also introduce a ordinance that addresses the instruments of crime issue. So, like right now, just like how people who get caught with drug charges often get paraphernalia charges slapped on, which are extra, and it's kind of like why? Same thing with sex workers. If you get caught with condoms while you get caught being a prostitute, you get charged with instruments of crime. And so it's an extra charge. And no matter where you fall on this issue, I think we can all agree that you want people to be safe. We don't want increases of diseases or pregnancies or any of that stuff. So don't charge people with that. So maybe even if the ordinance doesn't pass, I think the fact that we're even having the conversation and that we've talked to the police, Zappala's office was not anti this. That's crazy. When I tell people that, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. Zappala's office, again, they weren't like clapping and like, yeah, but they were like, oh yeah, if you guys pass that, we're not going to get in your eye about that. We're not going to harass you. We're not going to, we'll let you do that. Same thing like they said with the cannabis stuff, and they've been true to their word. So I'm optimistic, that we had the police chief on board as well. But the last one, I know that there's some stuff with the new one, and it's a whole,
Like which last one?
Yeah, which one? Yeah, the one that was the guy with the basketball thing. That guy. That one. He was like fine. He was like, I like it. I think it's a good idea. Whatever's fine. He wasn't. He was more neutral. He's like, hey, whatever you guys want to do, we'll follow or whatever. It was just great. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about this. I mean, we showed the data, we got the groups on board, the community. We showed the receipts. We met with the community members. If we had some huge organization or someone who was really not about it, I would listen to their concerns. And the same people who are against trafficking, because what there was that Teresa Nightingale Smith actually brought in an anti-trafficking organization, not related to this, but like on her own time to Pittsburgh City Council to educate them about that, which is an issue. It's important. Like I care about that too. I certainly don't want anyone who doesn't want to do this to be caught up in that. I can't imagine how horrible and terrifying that would be. I don't want that. But this ordinance doesn't prevent the police from doing the work for that. It doesn't. It would actually free up resources for them, which we want. In things like the NFL draft, they're coming in. We know that with the NFL draft, with just like the Super Bowl, if you're a sex worker, like you follow these things. There's a lot of maybe you don't know. You're like, I don't know that. Listen, I was a dancer for many years. I was a stripper for 15 years in the city here. Loved it. Loved the job. I knew that the other girls, that was a thing. Like if there was a Super Bowl, if there was a big event, you go there and you work, you follow. And then if you're doing that work, you might engage in sex work too. So if people are doing these things, I want there to be consensual, safety for everybody, the providers and the Johns, in case he gets robbed, in case she gets robbed, in case someone beats the crap out of someone. I want all that. These things don't happen as much as people cartoonishly like to think sometimes, but they do happen. And I want that conversation between police and providers and everyone else to be open. I want to build that trust. So anti-trafficking people can still focus on their good work. But yeah, I'm really optimistic about this. I think that we're in a good spot, and June 24th is going to be when we actually have the press rally and conference. It's going to be introduced, and I think it's going to be a good day.
Okay, so who needs to vote for it? I mean, so how does it work? What is the mechanism for that to be passed?
Sure. So on the day that it gets introduced, the Pittsburgh City Council will basically talk about the initial overview. We'll have folks give their testimony. Okay. People like me, people like Dina Stanley from Trans Uniting actually has helped me write a portion of the ordinance. Actually, she actually helped me to include a reference that actually specifically mentions LGBTQIA people. And Dina Stanley was actually a worker herself in the past, and so and knows about trafficking and all that stuff too, very intimately. We've used her testimony to help push this along too. So she'll be there. Other community group people will be there speaking. And then it's up to the city council to debate back and forth. And then the final vote, I believe, is on July 8th. Okay. So, yeah.
So the city councils have to vote for it.
Yeah, we need the majority.
Okay. And usually they show up, right? I mean, I'm sure they need quorum to vote,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Someone doesn't want to vote for it, and then somehow they take vacation.
No. And I heard that the same day that they introduced this bill, they're also going to introduce a bill with Dana Stanley that is a protection bill for trans folks in our city. So it gives them extra layer of protection for, I believe it's for like housing, workplace rights, like other general, like medical things. If I'm remembering correctly.
Right.
So yeah.
So I think I see a common thread or commonality between the cannabis activism and the sex workers, right? Here that
no victim, no crime.
Right. And also you're not pushing for decriminalizing the stuff, but you just want lessen it and then at the same time regulate it, right? So,
yeah, because people can't leave the industry if they have, and these people who are talking about trafficking or other stuff, fine. You don't want people to do this work, I understand, but you can't stop them with a gun to their head. And if they eventually are going to quit or they need housing or they are in a custody dispute, they cannot have this around their neck, or else they're going to be they're going to have the scarlet letter forever. And as taboo as the situation is, that's just not fair. It's just not fair for anybody.
Right. It's a reality, and I think you mentioned it's an angle that I haven't thought about it, and I guess a lot of people probably haven't thought about it. That NFL draft is here, and then that's going to be there's going to be a lot of people, and usually that's going to be that's going to mean a lot of
and the police will have anti-trafficking task force whenever that happens, which is great. They should, because there is stuff like that happens sometimes, and I want them to do that. I want them to go after people who are abusing that, and I want people who are just two adults meeting, having a good time after the draft date, go down to the casino, have a good dinner, enjoy yourself, whatever. I want those people to be fine. And they should be. This is the world's oldest profession. You cannot police morals. And, during COVID, the jokes about OnlyFans became more and more prevalent. Everyone has an OnlyFans now. OnlyFans this, OnlyFans that, whatever. So we're all cool with sex work until we're not. Because sex work doesn't just mean escorting or people who are doing the street walking or who are doing the hotel meetups. It also is strippers. It's also cam girls. It's also OnlyFans girls. It's anybody who has ever exchanged not just money straight up, like, hey, I will give you $500 to do X, Y, Z. Not just that. There's also a lot of, our society is based on a lot of give and take and a lot of that, for people. We can pretend like it doesn't, but it does.
So you bring up an issue or a key identification here about about what this ordinance covers, right? Is it only the physical contact, or also covers the online work?
Well, I mean, people only usually get caught in person for that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a police officer actually arrest anyone for like online. I think that's pretty consensual. Like, I think you're allowed to do that in Pennsylvania. Like, all that's legal.
Okay.
It's just like touching, and also like there's a lot of rules too about being close to people and doing sexual acts, like people who are like masturbating in front of someone else, something like that. But this would cover all that. So anything under the prostitution code. This wouldn't cover brothel. You can't just like start a brothel because this is passed. You can't do anything like that. Because that's still a whole separate law too. This is only for like one-on-one encounters, or or 1 and 2, I guess, if you're lucky. Whatever. But it's for that. And that's the thing too. When I said the spirit of the law, ordinances, I trust the Pittsburgh police to know. They're well trained. Most of them are well trained. Asterisk. Most are well trained, and most of these guys they do like their communities they work in. They know, and they want to keep people safe, and they know that Cindy, who is always at the corner, who does this, who otherwise is a survival sex, they know that she's not a bad person. She's not getting involved in anything bad. They know that she's not being trafficked. She's just having a tough go right now, and this is how she makes extra money. Or this is a professional who's beating someone down. Like, they know the difference between that and someone who's being trafficked. Just give them a tool to use, just another tool in their arsenal. That's all. But if you're not following the spirit of the law, then, you can get charged with prostitution still.
Okay. All right. So for Storybook audience who agrees with what Teresa just said, so how can they support you, either in for the cannabis and also for the sex workers, right?
Sure. If they hit us up on social media, I'm very responsive. I love inviting people to lobby with me, to come down to the events. I'll happily educate about how we do those things. I'll even draw avians. I love going to Harrisburg. I'll introduce you to the community. It's just for the sex worker stuff. If you're an actual worker, we have groups and discords and things people can talk to and be safe, and learn how to be safe. And then we also have for the cannabis stuff. Not just the lobbying days, but we also have events too. So just follow me on social media.
All right. So the June 24th at 9 a.m.
Yeah, June 24th, 9 a.m. There's going to be a lot of us.
And it's open for public, right?
It's open to the public. It's going to be on the rotunda, or not rotunda, but the main area of the City County building. There's parking all around the place. So, get down there, find some parking, and then we'll go in and see City Council.
Okay, so for the actual hearing.
Yes.
Right.
All
right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You have all the stories that people, probably my peers in this building, don't want to talk about. But I welcome all the stories. All right. Yay. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate it, Teresa.
Of course. Yeah.